Hello animators, welcome back. My name is Animean and welcome to my first ever Blender tutorial on this YouTube channel, and today I'm going to be showing all of you people at home how you can create one of these in Blender. Stay tuned. Dust storms are very useful when it comes to animating or creating a movie. For example, in my final major project, I was able to use this dust storm when creating my sci-fi movie. If you'd like to see what the final product looks like, the final movie will be down below in the description. It was my final major project at university, but today I'm going to be showing all of you people how you can do it. So let's get straight into it. So we have our viewport ready to use. As usual, we have our cube, camera and lighting. So first of all, we're going to be straight away deleting the light source. And then what we're going to make sure we do is we select the camera and then select item on the side and make sure each of the locations for the X, Y and Z value are all set to 0. The next one you do, you'll make sure that this value is 90 for the X axis for the rotation, and also make sure that the Z axis is 90 degrees. Make sure that this stays 0, because then the camera is going to stay in the center and it's going to be facing in that direction. You want to also make sure as well, you select this cube as well, and then scale it upwards. So press S on your keyboard and then scale it like so. So we're going to do it up to, let's say, 18 for now. And then as we view it inside as well, it's a perfect size for us when we are rendering out the final product. So what you also want to do next is make sure that this is dragged up. You want to make sure that you select this clock arrow face down, and then you want to make sure you select shader editor. And then you'll come up with this preset material that's always provided when opening up Blender. So we'll select the cube, make sure it is selected. Then what we want to do next is delete the principal BSDF, like so. Also as well, make sure that you have your viewport set to rendered. This is important because then now you'll notice that the box after deleting the principal BSDF is now black. So we want to do Shift A, or you can select add here. And then what we're going to do is add a principal volume. Principal volume, like so. Then what we want to do is make sure that the volume is connected to the volume. And then what we also want to do is make sure that the color of our object is set to however you want to do it. So in this scenario, we're going to be making it an orange color. So we're going to make it select here like so, as presented. And hopefully that plane doesn't capture in my audio, but oh well. It's wrong timing. But we're going to now add another feature which is going to add a color ramp, like so. Because now as we look through the camera view, it will start to notice that something is starting to develop, put that way. So what we want to do next is we want to make sure that this is set to 0.58, like so. And then we want to make sure make sure that the color is connected to the density, like so. Next stage, what you want to do is make sure that as we do Shift A, we add a noise texture. If I can spell it. Noise texture. And we'll make sure that the FAC is connected to the FAC, like so. Then next what we want to do is add a mapping, like so. Then make sure that the vector is connected to the vector. And then lastly, but not least, we are going to be adding a texture coordinate, like so. And then we want to make sure that the object is connected to the vector, like so. Then you may start to notice that it's starting to show a bit of color to it. Next what we're going to do is we're going to do Shift A, and then we're going to add a light source. So we're going to do a point, and we're going to make sure that this is of a relatively high value. So we're going to do 5000 on selecting the light source, which is just there. And then we're going to drag this along the X-axis, apologies, and then we're going to drag it to around here. so it's a relatively good distance. You'll start to notice now that something is starting to develop. Boom. So as we've just changed it to a rendered view, you now see that there's detail being presented. So we've got ourselves the template of what it excuse me, the template that we are being presented with. So you may think to yourself, oh, from looking at the 3D viewport that nothing's presented, but if you select the camera, you'll see that things are being shown and presented, which is something we want to achieve. The next stage is also very important. So next, what you want to do is go to the top right hand corner of your screen. You want to drag this out like so by selecting the left mouse button and then dragging out like so. Then you will make sure that you have plenty of space for you to see your viewport, and you want to make sure that this square box is, if I can, the dope sheet, or in other words the timeline, same thing but more focused keyframes. Anyway, so what we want to do next is we want to now basically begin to add animation or movement to the actual object. So this is what's called mapping, and mapping deciphers the position of a certain object, or for example in this case the clouds or the dust in our animation. So we're going to make sure that we start off our first value at 6 meters. We're going to set that by right clicking and inserting that as a keyframe. One thing to notice as well is that if you have a scenario where your item's not being selected or your object is not being selected, let's say I didn't have this object selected, for example, let's say I had the light source selected, you may have scenarios where your object or your keyframes aren't being presented. You want to make sure that you have selected the object and also the mapping. Then you most likely will see it appear, the keyframes, as circles or diamonds or whatever they look like to you, and then you'll be able to see the keyframes. What we are also going to do is drag it to the very end to 250 frames, and we're going to set the value of the y-axis to 36. So we're going to change that, right click, insert keyframe. Now as we play the animation, you'll start to notice that something is developing. You'll see now there's movement in the animation. It is recommended that you only focus on one direction, because there's going to be another part in the future of this video where we're going to be talking about positionings of keyframes. So what we're going to do is make sure that these keyframes are changed in certain positions, because one thing you don't want to do is as the animation plays, it gradually builds up, because you want to make sure that the animation is consistent depending on how you want it to look. So we're going to make sure that these keyframes are dragged to around 200, I'm going to say. We're going to make sure that also this value is set quite far away from it. So for now, I'd say that 1000 is a really good value. So as we've now played the animation, of course it's going to be slow, and you may see it something appearing like this on the keyframes when you play it after pressing spacebar. But the point is that it will look like this. Now this, of course, me using arrows and me moving the frames individually, but it will look something like that. Of course the frame rate is not going to be, of course, this speed, but it's going to basically look like this, but a lot faster, and depending, of course, on your keyframes. So depending on what your Y value is, deciphers the position of the actual dust storm. So as you can see now, it's 10.4, and now when I move along keyframes, 13.5, the actual position of the dust storm has now changed. So we're going to have a bit of a play about, so I'll be cutting ahead in the video once I've got myself ready and all set up for you. After skipping ahead of the video, you may decide that you want to have a fiddle about with some of the features. A good example is the noise texture scale. So as I change the scale, you'll start to notice that less detail is presented, and the actual size of the actual clouds, or the dust storm in this case, will change. So as I increase the value, more details presented and they get smaller, and also this may affect your actual final product, so be aware of that. And also if you decrease the size of value to a relatively good size that's suitable, let's say around 4 maybe, depending on what your preference is, excuse me. But in this case we're going to keep it around 5 to 6, so in this case we're going to keep it at 6. Now you're probably thinking, oh, do I need to set keyframes for this? No, you do not have to, because that will affect your actual look of your dust storm, and you don't want the size of the dust storm changing every single time. However, if you want to go into more detail and go from 6 to maybe 4 each time, fluctuating, you're more than welcome to do that. So, if you want to have a bit of fiddle about with this color ramp, the lower the value, the more of the orange is shown, and the higher the value, the less detail shown, and the fewer the clouds are. So, also as well, one thing important to understand as well when it comes to the colour, you can adjust it however you like. So you can see from all the colours that I have, I may decide to use it differently. So, maybe an example of maybe when you need to use these kind of animations is, let's say you're having a cauldron scene, maybe it's a fantasy scene and there's a potion you have. You could maybe use the colour green for a gas effect or a smoke effect. This will be really handy for you. And also as well, you may decide to use some of this possibly for a smoke effect. So you may decide that you change the colour and make it black, maybe create a dust effect, or in that you may create white and it creates some fog effect. It's all up to you. So we're going to keep it back to orange, and now what we're going to do is going to be preparing ourselves to render the animation, which will be in a separate part video. This will be. Also as well, if you have any scenarios of where you decide that you want to adjust maybe the Y value, you'll feel free to do that as always. But anyway, that has been part 1 of the animation, and part 2 will be the finalizing and the rendering of the animation. Consider checking me out for part 2 of this tutorial, and I'll see you very soon. Bye for now.